good with the shot of the goal!
Big goal for Ferris State. Make it a 3-1 game.
Great job by the Bulldogs to find a way to get it done.
Some people don't like it, but that's just how I am.
College sports is shifting. It's all about game experience.
I can't think of better people to be spending my time with.
We raise a family here, and it's something that's not seen in a lot of other schools.
You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs, brought to you by Ferris State Athletics.
It's Behind the Bulldogs, Summer Series, Episode 7. Joe Nagy, Brandon Worth, Brody Kaiser in the studio. You would not believe that this is our third time trying to intro the show, but it is. But we got a great episode on deck for you.
Yeah, we got to be honest here. We're in holiday mode. It's 4th of July week, and we're recording early, and we want to get it out to you guys, but I'm ready to be on the boat. Fishing rod in my hand.
I'm struggling.
It's gonna be great. But we're gonna still have a great episode, fellas. It might take a little while, but obviously with the energy that we're gonna have talking about this team for how well they did this year, Final Four trip, regional championship, women's basketball, unbelievable season, and we can't wait to get into it.
Holy cow, what a year. And it just, it's good that we went a couple tries to get through the intro because now the brains are turned on, they're fired up, they're ready to go, and we're going to kill this episode. It's going to be great.
We are rolling, as they say. But we got a good episode. We can't stress that enough. We'll get right into it. Fellas, should we just say what our first thoughts were from this year? We were able to see a lot of games in person and just how good this team actually was. But Brandon, if you want to start off, just let it flow out, man. Say whatever you want to say.
My word is unbelievable, and I'm probably getting a lot of crickets now and just yelling of how I choose the boring word. Choose is not a word, but that's okay. We're going to keep going here. So it was a great season, and I can't stress enough for how well this team was resiliency. We're talking about going into the most hated place for somebody to wear a Bulldog uniform, Bulldog attire, as a fan, as a player, as a coach, and going in with all odds against you, playing two of the best teams in the entire country and beating them en route to a regional championship to reach the Elite Eight and eventually get to the Final Four, playing on CBS. That's amazing. And you looked at what this team had to deal with, multiple injuries throughout the year. And obviously, thankfully, they weren't long injuries like we had dealt with a couple years prior, but we were able to bounce back. A lot of the young players stepped up. And obviously, we're going to talk about the breakout candidates. We'll break down the season more in depth as we go on. But it was just incredible to see the resiliency of this team. And you just really knew this was the year for a big run, and boy, they took advantage in a huge way.
Absolutely, and you alluded to the two big-time games that were played in the NCAA tournament down at Grand Valley, being Ashland and Grand Valley. But if you remember, their first round against Lewis was also a game that was pretty hyped up because of how powerful Lewis's offense was. We talked a lot with Kurt Westendorp, and I believe it was Chloe and Mallory that we did a media session with before that game, and they were just talking about how in tune to their defensive alignment they had to be for that matchup because of how good the Flyers can be on offense, and we held them to 53 points. So an amazing start to the tournament. The defense really played extremely well throughout the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, it did result in a loss to Texas Women's, but what an incredible year, great postseason run, and really an outstanding regular season as well.
I will say, going back to that Grand Valley game, we all three were there. I actually snuck in, so hopefully Grand Valley does not get mad. I snuck in like a side door because I was just like, this is probably open. I don't know. But that's amazing. I got it. And that was probably, that whole postseason run was just the greatest atmospheres that you could see.
Absolutely.
It helped, obviously, that it was at Grand Valley, an hour away, not that far of a drive. But when I walked into to the arena and you saw the whole half of the court was just red and yellow, and it was just awesome to see. And I think that was a big thing too, where you have the Bulldog faithful being able to get behind them in so many of these games and go along with them. It just makes it so much more important to see these wins come through. And it's just a wild spot. You also got to shout out players. Kaden Blanchard had an incredible postseason run. Chloe Idoni really put the team on her back at some points. Mal McCartney was just dishing out assists like crazy. And you also have Kenzie Bowers too, who is just lights out in some of those games. Grand Valley, she had a few big shots as well. Tampa, there's just a whole bunch of spots and a whole bunch of players that we can highlight that just stepped up when they really needed to. Even regular season when we went to go to Ashland, that nobody thought they were going to be able to win that game. I think it was like a 55-game win streak that Ashland had at home, and then we go in there. That moves us up. I think it was to like 5 or 4th in the nation after that win. It was just insane, but it was just really, I mean, you already said it, Brandon. It was just resiliency from the start, being able to just power through some of those tough times. And, you already seen it. Farthest run in the postseason that we've ever had. First regional championship. It's just a massive, massive wins all the way through.
It really was. And as we look into more of the roster breakdown, I mean, obviously the 3 names you mentioned, right? Mallory McCartney, Caden Blanchard, Chloe Idoni were definitely the top 3 on this team as far as obviously media coverage, as you probably saw throughout. But it wasn't just them. I mean, we can stress that more after watching it. I mean, especially you looked at some of those big games. I mean, there were a lot of big plays that were made by Kenzie Bowers. There were a lot of great minutes put together by Amaku Nabagwa, who was great down low when she had relief as well. How about Maya Hiram, especially in that regional championship game? She came in huge when Chloe was in foul trouble from a couple of questionable calls. But you looked at just how the depth of this team, and I think there's a lot of fans out there that are looking, obviously losing Chloe, losing Mallory, losing Amaka. It's like, man, this team's going to take a step back. And I don't really think that's the case, guys. I think that there's a lot on this team that's still put together. Obviously, you got a great recruiting class coming in, which we saw El Irwin really stand out last year as a freshman, or sophomore, I should say. And we saw a lot of these great players that were really doing well in their development of their sophomore campaigns as well. So I think you just have to look at really where this group is. And I mean, we could still see, Deshauna Day coming back. That could be huge. Caden Blanchard coming back. And you have really that core still really intact. Obviously, you're losing 3 key players, but it's not like you're losing over half the team. And especially with the chemistry, what Coach Westendorp has done with that group, I mean, you're looking still at a couple of double-digit point scorers on this team, really. And I think a couple of breakout candidates to get into that category as well. But I think the biggest thing too to stress, this team was great at controlling the basketball. Assist to turnover ratio was 4th in the nation. That's how this team got so far last year. They did not turn the ball over, and they dished it out and got easy buckets. And that's what really made this team great. And it wasn't just because of the players, but also because of the scheme. And I think that's a really big key for this team moving forward, something to highlight.
Yeah, moving forward, it's interesting because you lose Chloe Idoni, you lose Mallory McCartney as your 2 starters, and of course Amaka played significant minutes coming off the bench for the squad as well. Losing Chloe, you're losing a potential for, a lot of people could argue as should have been the GLIAC Player of the Year. So that's a big time loss. But you have Maya Hiram, who plays that same sort of role, an inside out type of big player that has good footwork down low, can stretch and shoot the 3. So maybe, you lose a little bit of production there, but you have that role sort of ready to be filled by Maya and what she was able to do this year. Remember, she was coming off of an injury from last season also, just like Caden Blanchard was. So, another year removed from that injury should hopefully help her going forward. But the big question mark is going to be who can take over the lead of this team at the point guard spot for Mallory. We saw this team struggle in the Saginaw Valley game where we lost at home. I'm trying to find the exact date. That was February 15, 47-44. That was a game that Mallory did not play in, and you could definitely tell that the offense was just a little bit out of sync. So that's going to be the big question mark going forward, is who can take this role over. And you got to believe that with what you've seen from a player like Kenzie Bowers, that if she can go into this offseason with the mentality that she's got to take that role on next season, or if Coach Westendorp wants to try to figure something else out, got to trust in the coaching staff and trust in the experienced players that you have to be able to do that going forward.
I think you got to toss the name Grace Sullivan in there too. Because there were times where she came off the bench. I mean, there was, we'd be up 15 or something like that. And she also came in there when there was, a very close game on the line. And her ability to handle the basketball was, on par with a lot of the better players that we've seen in the GLIAC so far this year. So I think too, giving this offseason a little bit more time to develop and having, those players kind of step up a little bit. And the best part about it is saying that we already have these 2 names tossed out here with Kenzie and Grace. That does not mean that they're the only 2 either. We got a lot more people on the bench too that can step up on that situation. But still, I mean, Mallory being so efficient with her passes and being able to kind of open it up, being a floor general that she is, it's going to be tough. But I still think, seeing who we do have returning, it's going to be not as much of a big deal for people to think about.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And obviously, you still have the shooting threat as well coming off the bench. Emma Skrapik was fantastic in her minutes as well, as we saw Mia Riley really stand out as well. So this team really has a lot. And we're not even mentioning freshmen coming in. I mean, that's going to add a whole whole nother element for this team. And I think especially we saw really how good this team was over the last couple stretch of games where their offense was really getting efficient and they didn't feel the need that they needed to score 80 points to win a basketball game. And they were starting to really lock it down. And there was a lot of these. I mean, you're looking at these tournament games, and there was no games that really eclipsed 60 points. And that's something that really was made from the defensive end. Getting turnovers, getting blocks, protecting the paint, winning the board battle. That was definitely a struggle at times with this group, winning the board battle. But when they did, it turned the game completely, just flipped the switch. It really turned the game on its head. And I think that's something that when you look at a program-wide consideration going into the future, that's a big pivotal pillar for a program, being able to win when the shots aren't falling. That's the difference between a national contending team and a conference contending team, right? Being able to win when the shots aren't falling. There were times this year where this team, as talented of shooters as we had, struggled shooting the basketball. It happens. We all play noon ball here, and we know for a fact the shots don't fall every week, you know? So it's really a pivotal piece to the program, being able to have that in your system and being able to be comfortable playing in an uncomfortable situation, not being able to score the basketball. This team did that, and they did it really well, and that's why they made it to the Final Four.
I do just want to say that it's much more frequent that I struggle to make shots than any of the players that we have.
That
on this
is
team
true.
Noon ball. So
facts.
That being thrown out there.
See, I'm
but
more of a facilitator myself.
Joe drops dimes. He loves dropping dimes.
He does drop some dimes. But yes, Brandon, you're absolutely right. That is the difference between a championship or a conference championship contending team and a national championship contending team is the ability to win in different ways. Yes, it's great to score 85 points and put some serious pressure on the opponents to put the ball in the bucket. Wow, it is definitely holiday mode. Sorry, fellas. To score points. But then you also have to be able to win some of those games where you're not able to do that yourself. You have to be able to lock down defensively. As you said, Brandon, you have to win the battle on the boards, and that's exactly what this team was able to do. You know, the first game against Lewis, 75-53, we pretty much cruised to a victory in that one, which is even more impressive considering how strong Lewis's offense is. But then a 64-59 against Ashland, who many consider to be a national championship favorite. Then a 49-46 victory against Grand Valley, a 60-53 win against Tampa. I think that really just shows you that this team peaked defensively at the right time of the season, and they were able to ride that high to a Final Four.
Yeah, and I think, too, you look at it, and Coach Westendorp, when you've been able to see him coach and see those really intense games, he was still able to keep a level head. So I think, too, when you look at it, and you get into those stressful parts, the later part of the season, when you have your head coach, you know, being able to kind of set the tone a little bit, and when it can get just a little bit too stressful and just a little bit too much for you, when the lights might be a little bit too bright, having Coach Westendorp there and how calm he is, it just really kind of sets the tone. I mean, because even in the stands, you were able to see that. Like, you get a little bit, you know, we're in a 2-point game and it's going to get maybe, you know, it's going to go the other way, but him able to draw up those plays and just still be able to make those good decisions when, you know, the game is on the line, that's a huge thing. Obviously, players are the ones that have to execute it, but when you have a guy like Coach Westendorp, he's kind of really cemented himself as a guy who's going to be here and be a Bulldog for quite a while.
Yeah, and he really, I think, broke the notion of the Bulldogs can't win some of these big games really in 2022. Going to Allendale, winning that GLIAC tournament, that flipped the switch and kept this program moving in the right direction, continuing to trend upward, and that's how we've gotten here. So he deserves a lot of credit. Coach K as well. She's been fantastic. Coach Carlson helping the team shoot the rock has definitely been impactful as well. So you can name all the coaches in detail, everything that they do, and you can see why this team is good each and every year. But I mean, you look at statistically, we mentioned a couple earlier. I know Brody and Joe did as well. I mean, you're looking number one, obviously Brody mentioned this, Chloe Idoni, number 2 scorer in the entire conference last year, 16.7 per game. That's going to be hard to replace. But I mean, I think we could definitely agree around this table that we're looking at the point guard spot is really the gaping hole for how well Maya played down the stretch. Even though you won't see it over the season-wide statistics, you're going to see those games and be, okay, yeah, she really can fill that spot. Not necessarily saying she's going to be Chloe 2.0, of course. Chloe had a fantastic campaign, shouldn't take away from her. But really the way that she has been able to groom Maya into that spot should definitely be noticed. But I mean, you're going to be bringing back Caden Blanchard most likely, the number 8 scorer in the GLIAC right now. So I think that's definitely a big plus for this group. Obviously, we mentioned mentioned shooting the basketball, right? 3-point percentage is something that we would love to see continue to increase, right? Mallory was actually, I believe, the leader in our group this year in GLIAC action, I think at 33%. And you can see some of those numbers, man, like, whoa, 33%. That's good. But obviously there's, 9 other names that are higher. We like to see it back up that list. So you'll see a little bit of an increase, I think, next year with this team just being comfortable to shoot the basketball, I should say. But I think when you look at a lot of the looks that they had, I mean, field goal percentage wise, there was a lot of good looks under the basket, not necessarily having to shoot from outside all the time. I think that was a really big key. You look at players like Deshaun Day, looking at players like L. Irwin that love to attack the basket, get to the hole, make something happen, draw contact, still finish the end one and keep going. So I think that was definitely something to note as well when in terms of shooting. I mean, ball control as well. I mean, you're looking at points per game. I mean, we mentioned the assist to turnover ratio, top 5 in the nation for a reason. We took care of the basketball and didn't turn it over. And I think that was a huge part of it as well. When you look at necessarily at rebounding, there was some really good numbers all year round. Caden Blanchard, I believe, was actually in the top 15, I believe, with Kenzie Bowers as well, with Chloe Idoni, which that's a big key part. We talked about winning the battles on the board. So all those individuals at around 5.5 to 6 rebounds a game. And then, of course, assist. Obviously, Mallory, the facilitator, really led this group and led the entire conference at 5 assists a game. That's going to be a little bit harder to replace. But when you look at a lot of these players, it's too, like Kenzie Bowers is really a glue player. She really is great defensively. She can make a jump shot. She can really do everything gritty wise, win the rebounding battle, play really good defense on ball. And I think that's really a big piece as well. Even though you don't see it on the stat sheet, I think that's a really important piece as well. Defensively, you're looking at steals as far as blocks as well. Top 5, Chloe was actually in steals as a big at just about 2. That's something definitely to note of as well. And blocks, I believe she was also at about 1 per game, right around there. I think she hovered right around 1.1, 1.2 during the season, but it kind of went back down in the postseason. So somewhere around 1.0. But you look at those numbers, and I mean, you still see the depth down the list. And I think that's a big part of this group. And I think that's why people shouldn't be as concerned for this some supposedly cliff drop off we're going to see. I don't know what those people were thinking. I would imagine they're probably the hopeful opposing GLIAC fans that are hoping to see that, but I don't think they're going to get that luck this year.
Yeah, well, you mentioned depth too, and I think it's important to know that just last season, not this past season, but 2 seasons ago, I guess, Mia Riley and Elle Irwin were freshmen at the time, and they played significant minutes because as we were talking about earlier, there were some injuries to this team. So they both had their minutes decreased as sophomores this past year, but showed so much spark and so much promise as freshmen when they were asked to step up. And that's going to be exactly what happens again this year as they go into their junior seasons. They're going to be asked to step up and take over some of those roles to help out the guard play with Kenzie and Deshauna, and try to fill that void left by Mal. And then also, we haven't even mentioned Claire Erickson yet, who was a freshman this past year.
Right.
She shows a ton of promise. She's got some room to grow, but absolutely could fill into that very capable backup center position behind Maya over the next couple of seasons. And I do think that the depth is absolutely there. And again, as you mentioned, Brandon, that we haven't even talked about the incoming recruits yet, and we haven't even had a chance to see them in the Bulldog uniform. So there's definitely a good young core. There's a good group of upperclassmen leaders. And even though there are a couple big time holes to fill with what's being left from the seniors this year, I think there's a lot left in place still, and a great coaching staff that is Coach Kurt Westdorp and Karis are phenomenal schemers. They understand how to put their players in the best position possible for success. So I think with what they've got, it should be another great year.
And I think if you look at the GLIAC as a whole, you have a lot of teams who have a pretty solid amount of returners. I mean, I was kind of looking through a little bit and seeing kind of what teams are where. I mean, Grand Valley is obviously going to be tough. I think they're returning Riley. Brisbane, I think her name was, she was the GLIAC Player of the Year. You also see Saginaw Valley, who's probably going to be returning a lot. Northern is going to make some changes so that way they can look to keep that rolling and make another playoff appearance. It's going to be interesting, but I still think, you see how well this team has played, and already on the big stage going to the Final Four, and you saw some appearances from these underclassmen. I think you're going to be able to just see that fire being lit under them, want to get back and just keep continuing this legacy of excellence that we can probably get used to seeing for these next few years.
For sure. I wish we knew the schedule like right now so we could be able to talk. It would be amazing, but we obviously have to speculate from here on out. The GLIAC schedule league-wide will be out sometime in the next couple months once we get more towards the winter. But I think there's definitely some fans out there that would love to see us play the Eagles again. I think I think this is going to be a regular occurrence. We at least hope that we can play Ashland here after a year. Maybe this year they can come over to Wink. That would be pretty sweet. So I think we would love to be able to continue to play them because we want to play those big teams. Obviously, we're going to play Grand Valley. They're going to be probably another top 10, top 15 at least, if not top 5 team once again for the depth that they've been able to show year after year. Despite losing a whole bunch of seniors, we're like, oh, this might be the year they drop. Nope, they're right back. They're always a really good competitive group. I mean, we saw Northern, a team that had a lot of talent. Obviously, there's going to be a couple that are going to be leaving, but can that core keep it together and can some people step up? I think you saw a lot of those players, especially McKaylee Kuhn was one that really stood out to me watching her play. JC Weisbrod could really shoot it. So you're talking a lot about those two individuals as far as what they bring. Can there be outside players that can really provide to that as well? Michigan Tech, Saginaw Valley always have some very good crafty point guards as well. So that's always going to be something to watch for. But I mean, schedule wise, I mean, Coach Westendorp has definitely shown like they're going to play these tough teams as much as they can, right? Being able to going to Ashland, a team that won, 40 games in a row in their home building until we beat them. I mean, it's an absurd streak, and we were able to get there and be able to beat them. But they want to play these big teams, right? They want to go play a lot of these non-conference teams. They played Damon at Damon, a team that made it, I believe, if I remember correctly, Sweet 16 or Elite 8 in their gym, which, by the way, is one of the most unique gyms I've ever seen. It certainly seems very hard to play in just based on the photos online. So they're going to play a lot of these teams in non-conference, and they're going to play all these other region teams as well to be able to have a look at where they're looking this year. So that's going to be something to watch, but I would love to see them continue to play some of these tougher teams, and I'm sure Coach Westendorp knows the group's up to the task.
Ferris State won 3 games last year against opponents who were at one point ranked number 1. Twice against Grand Valley, and then, of course, the 2 games against Ashland, and then the one against Grand Valley in the regional championship as well. So knocked off 3 times a team who had been ranked number 1, which is just wild.
It's just a wild thought.
Not once, not twice, 3 times.
The fact that you have that many opportunities against a number 1 team is wild, and then to capitalize on all of them is also incredible. But one game that I want to point out specifically was the February 1st game against Northern Michigan, where we trailed 40-26 at halftime at home. And then we came out in the third quarter and scored 30 points and held Northern to 8. That was the moment where I think, even because, you see that your team beat the number 1 team in the country in Ashland at this point, already done that. But this was a game where the Bulldogs struggled early and had to fight all the way back. The Ashland game was a battle all the way through and through. This game was overcoming a challenge right in front of you. And I think that was a moment where I was like, wow, this team can really be special.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys already said it. I can't. Yeah, that's the tough part about going third. It's just like everything gets said, and I'm just like, yep, keep that rolling. But still, I mean, you can't really say too much more than just saying that, like, if you can kind of continue just playing well against those good teams and making sure, especially schedule-wise, you get the chance. I mean, like you said, Brandon, having Ashland on the schedule early is so incredibly valuable because you realize this is what we got to get kind of focused up on and maybe improve upon. Especially getting the W this year is a big time thing, but we still saw a lot of spots in the game that needed to be improved on. And just keeping up the strength of schedule is going to be a big thing.
It's going to be huge. All right, we got a couple minutes left. We'll get to our breakout candidates. And just because, obviously, it is tough to go third, we're going to give Joe Nagy the honors to go first. So
big time. Well, people might be asking, Joe, what are you going to pick? Everybody's waiting. You're on hands and knees. You're begging for it. I know you are. I was going to maybe say Grace Sullivan, but I think you got to go, with Maya Hiram. I mean, she's got a chance for some big time improvement, as well as getting put into a new spot. I mean, she should try not to be the next Chloe. She should be trying to play to where her game really comes to fruition. We already saw where she had to come in where Chloe would get in foul trouble, 3 fouls, in the second quarter sometimes, or late in the game if Chloe was fouling out or something like that. She still came in and there was just a little bit different of an approach to the game, obviously with the offensive scheme, but still it was one that suited her very well. And I think if you now get a chance for this whole offseason, the team's going to be working on it. She's going to be somebody who's going to probably take the conference by storm, because you're gonna have a lot of people wondering, is she gonna be able to fill Chloe's shoes? I think so.
All right, and that's a good pick. Brody.
I'm going to go with Elle Irwin. We talked a little bit about her earlier. This is Brandon must have also wanted to take Elle Irwin as his breakout.
Highlighted right on my list.
It ain't easy, big dog. It ain't easy going third.
But I think Elle has shown a lot through her first 2 years of her ability to do a little bit of everything. She's a good scorer. She can shoot the three at a high level. She's been known for her defense. That's really what's kept her in the lineup for long periods of time. She started 27 games as a freshman, so she's got some of that experience. And I think that she's also got the ability to take over games if she needs to. She just hasn't had to do that yet because she's not been an elite level scorer for this team. I think she can be. I think she's a do-it-all player, excellent defender, and she's my breakout pick.
Great pick, Brody. Good thing I had two because I was very keyed in on Elle Irwin, but that's okay because my second individual I don't want to clarify them as the backup, but I already did, but it's okay because at the same point, we're going to talk about them as a breakout, and there's no question about it, no matter who you pick. And if you're a Fair State fan, you know that there's going to be a breakout coming off the bench, and I think that definitely could be, when we look at what this team can do off the bench, I think there's going to be some great three-point shooting, and I think Mia Riley can be one of those individuals, right? You saw the numbers last year. She really struggled shooting the three ball in those chances in the games, but she was trusted in a lot of those moments, right? And I think that especially what she brings to the table defensively as well. She's a good facilitator of the ball. She knows where the ball needs to go at certain times. You could see it on the floor. So I think she could really have a big year. I think really coming off the bench, potentially maybe even getting in the starting lineup. You never know what's going to happen in the season, injury personnel wise. You never know, but I think especially off the bench, there's really, you look at Allie Schultz, Emma Skrbek as well. They can easily fill that role. Like it could easily be one of those three individuals just based on what we've seen more in sample size from Mia Riley. That's the reason why I picked them. But any of those three could be there. There's going to be one that's going to break out, and they can all shoot the three ball. You watch it in practice. You look at Emma and Allie's numbers. You can see it. If you look at Mia last year, not necessarily last year, but the year before, you know that she can shoot the rock very well. So any of those three, but right now, Mia Riley, just based on sample size, is going to be my pick. But I think we're going to see a lot of big time breakouts this year. And the team needs it because if they're going to keep it going, they're going to have some big names, drop some big numbers.
Mm-hmm. And the GLIAC especially is going to be just as competitive, if not more, for this upcoming season.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Big thanks to Dazos Digital. You can find out more at dazosdigital.com. If you need any digital needs for your social media, website development and more, the holiday episode, guys, we got through it. Not errorless, but we got through it.
We did it. We made it.
So hopefully,
way to go, guys.
Yes, hopefully you guys bared with us. Be sure to subscribe. We're going to be tackling the other side, men's basketball, when we return. Hopefully you guys have a great, and hopefully a really, really great 4th of July weekend.
Don't be dumb this weekend.
Dare you say excellent?
Is that the word I'm looking for?
Don't be dumb this weekend. Make some smart decisions.
Hopefully you have an excellent July 4th weekend. And until next time.
Take care, everybody.